What happens when a royal guest goes completely off the rails on live television, turning a simple morning show appearance into a total disaster? You're about to find out in today's story that left viewers across America dropping their coffee cups in shock. Before we start, hit that subscribe button and share in the comments your thoughts on celebrity guests who struggle with basic interview questions. The Good Morning America studio was buzzing with its usual pre-show energy. Michael Strahan, the beloved host, known for his warm demeanor and professional handling of difficult guests, was preparing for what producers had promised as a straightforward interview. The guest was scheduled to discuss her recent charitable work and upcoming projects, a typical feel-good segment to brighten viewers' mornings. As the cameras rolled and the familiar theme music faded, Michael flashed his signature smile at the audience. Good morning, America. I'm Michael Strahan, and we have a very special guest with us today. Please welcome Meghan Markle. The applause was polite but enthusiastic as Meghan walked onto the set. She settled into the plush interview chair across from Michael, smoothing her designer dress and offering a practiced smile. The studio lights caught the expensive jewelry adorning her wrists and neck. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Meghan, thank you so much for joining us this morning, Michael began, his warm professional tone shining through. I know our viewers are excited to hear about your latest charitable work. You've been involved with several organizations recently. Meghan shifted slightly, a flicker crossing her expression. Well, Michael, I appreciate you having me on, though I have to say, I'm surprised by how basic that question is. I would have expected something more substantive from someone in your position. The comment hung in the air. Michael's media training kicked in immediately, his smile steady despite the unexpected rudeness. Of course, let's dive deeper then. Can you tell us about the specific impact you're hoping to make with your foundation work? Impact? Meghan's tone turned condescending. Michael, I think you're missing the bigger picture here. The work I do isn't just about impact. It's about transformation. It's about changing the entire landscape of how we think about social responsibility. But I suppose that might be difficult for some people to grasp. Camera operators exchanged glances. This wasn't the friendly celebrity interview they had prepared for. Michael, however, stayed professional, leaning forward slightly with genuine interest. That's fascinating. Meghan, can you give our viewers some concrete examples of this transformation you're working toward? Meghan laughed sharply. Concrete examples. Michael, you're thinking too small. You're trapped in this old-fashioned media mindset where everything has to be reduced to sound bites and simple explanations. The work I'm doing operates on a much higher level than that. I understand, Michael replied smoothly. Though viewers could sense his patience being tested, he continued, our audience includes people from all walks of life who might be inspired to get involved in similar work. Could you help them understand how they might contribute? That's exactly the problem, Meghan said, her voice rising slightly. Everyone wants to contribute, but they don't want to do the real work of understanding the complexities involved. They want everything handed to them in neat little packages. That's not how real change happens. Michael, in the control room, the producer frantically signaled to the floor manager, sensing the interview was veering off course. Michael, reading the room, tried to steer the conversation back. Let's talk about your recent trip to New York, where you visited several community centers. What was that experience like for you? Meghan's eyes narrowed. You know, Michael, I find it interesting that you're focusing on the trip rather than the systemic issues those community centers are trying to address. It's this kind of surface-level journalism that prevents real progress from being made. I'm certainly interested in discussing those systemic issues, Michael replied, professionalism intact. What would you say are the most pressing concerns you encountered? The most pressing concern, Meghan said, dripping with condescension, is that people in positions like yours, with platforms like this, continue to ask the wrong questions. You have millions of viewers, Michael, and you're wasting that opportunity on superficial celebrity chit-chat. The studio audience, previously polite, began shifting uncomfortably. Some viewers at home reached for their remote controls, unsure if they were witnessing a train wreck or performance art. Michael's jaw tightened subtly, but his voice stayed steady. I appreciate your perspective, Meghan. Our goal is always to inform and inspire our viewers. If there are specific issues you'd like to highlight, I'm happy to give you that platform. Meghan's tone sharpened. Michael, this isn't about you giving me anything. This is about you doing your job properly. When was the last time you challenged your guests to think beyond their comfort zones? When was the last time you used this show to address real issues instead of promoting celebrity projects? The control room was in chaos. The producer debated whether to cut to commercial early, while the director tried to decide which camera angles would best capture what was rapidly becoming a disaster. Michael, however, handled the situation with the grace and professionalism that had defined his career. We cover a wide range of topics on Good Morning America, he said calmly. Today, we invited you here to discuss your charitable work, because our viewers are interested in learning about causes they might want to support. If you'd prefer to discuss other topics, we can certainly do that. Other topics? Meghan's voice had reached a pitch that strained the audio engineers. Michael, everything is connected. You can't separate charitable work from politics, from social justice, from the fundamental inequalities that plague our society. But I suppose that level of thinking might be too complex for morning television. The insult hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several crew members glanced at Michael, wondering how he would respond to such a blatant attack on his intelligence and professionalism. Michael took a deep breath, hands clasped in his lap. Meghan, I think our viewers would benefit from hearing about specific ways they can get involved in causes you care about. Can we focus on actionable steps people can take? Actionable steps. Meghan laughed bitterly. Michael, you're still not getting it. The first actionable step is for people like you to stop dumbing down important conversations. The second step is to stop treating your audience like they're incapable of handling complex ideas. The personal attacks were becoming more frequent and pointed. Michael's professionalism was being tested in ways few television hosts ever experienced, yet he maintained his composure, aware that millions of viewers were watching how he would handle the increasingly hostile situation. What happened next would go down as one of the most uncomfortable moments in morning television history. Michael, still professional despite the relentless attacks, gave his guest one more chance to redirect the conversation constructively. Meghan, I can see you're passionate about these issues, he said, his voice steady, with just a hint of strain. Perhaps you could share with our viewers what originally inspired you to get involved in charitable work. Meghan's response was immediate and cutting. What inspired me, Michael, was seeing how people in positions of influence consistently failed to use their platforms responsibly, present company included. The studio fell silent except for the hum of equipment. Even seasoned cameramen, who had seen countless interviews go sideways, were stunned by the brazen disrespect on live television. Michael's smile faded, replaced by a serious expression. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that, Meghan. Of course you don't understand, she replied dismissively. That's exactly the problem. You're sitting there asking me fluffy questions about community center visits when there are children going hungry, families torn apart by systemic racism, women silenced by patriarchal structures, and your response is to ask about inspiration. Those are certainly important issues, Michael said, his patience visibly thin. If you'd like to discuss any of those topics specifically, we can, but attacking me personally isn't going to help address any of those problems. Attacking you, Michael? I'm trying to educate you. There's a difference. Though I realize that distinction might be lost on someone who spent their career asking celebrities about their workout routines and favorite recipes. The personal jab struck. Michael had worked tirelessly to establish himself as a serious journalist and television host, transitioning from his sports career with dedication and professionalism. The crew noticed his jaw tighten slightly, though his voice remained controlled. I've been fortunate to interview world leaders, Nobel Prize winners, and people making real differences in their communities, he said quietly. I take my responsibility to our viewers very seriously. Do you? Meghan's tone turned mocking. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you take your paycheck seriously. There's a difference between responsibility and just showing up to collect a salary. The control room was in complete chaos. The producer frantically debated cutting to commercial, while network executives, alerted to the disaster unfolding on live TV, made urgent phone calls. But Michael didn't back down. Meghan, I invited you here as a guest on our show, and I've tried to give you every opportunity to share your message with our audience. But I won't sit here and let you insult me, our show, or our viewers. Meghan's laugh was sharp and contemptuous. Michael, your viewers are part of the problem. They're content to sit in their living rooms, sipping their coffee, feeling good about themselves for watching a segment about charity work, but they're not actually doing anything meaningful to create change. The camera caught several audience members looking genuinely offended. These were real people who had taken time out of their morning to attend a taping, and now they were being insulted by someone they had come to see. Michael's protective instincts kicked in. I think you're underestimating our audience. Meghan, the people watching this show are teachers, nurses, parents, small business owners, people who work hard every day to support their families and contribute to their communities. Contribute. Meghan's voice rose again. Michael, showing up to work and paying taxes isn't contribution. It's basic functioning. Real contribution requires sacrifice, requires challenging the status quo, requires making people uncomfortable. But I suppose that's too much to ask from people who get their news from morning television. The insults were now directed not just at Michael, but at the millions of Americans watching at home. Social media was already exploding with outrage as viewers expressed their shock at what they were witnessing. Michael leaned forward slightly, his professional mask finally beginning to slip. Meghan, I think you need to be very careful about how you characterize the people who are watching this program. Careful, she shot back. Michael, careful is exactly the problem. Everyone's so worried about being careful, about not offending anyone, about maintaining the comfortable status quo. Meanwhile, real issues go unaddressed because people like you are too careful to ask the hard questions. What hard questions would you like me to ask? Michael's voice now carried an edge. How about this? Meghan said, leaning back with a satisfied smirk. When was the last time you used your platform to challenge your viewers' preconceptions? When was the last time you made them genuinely uncomfortable with truths they didn't want to hear? When was the last time you did anything other than serve up easily digestible entertainment disguised as journalism? The attack on his professional integrity was the final straw. Michael had endured personal insults and watched his guest attack the audience, maintaining composure throughout, but questioning his journalistic credentials struck at the core of who he was. I've covered natural disasters, interviewed families dealing with tragedy, highlighted social injustice, and given a platform to people fighting for important causes, he said, voice steady but firm. I don't need to attack my guests or insult my audience to prove my commitment to journalism, don't you? Meghan's tone was openly hostile. Because from where I sit, it looks like you need to do something to prove you're more than just a pretty face reading from a teleprompter. The studio was dead silent. Even the most experienced crew members had never witnessed such blatant disrespect on live television. Michael's hands clenched in his lap, but he took a deep breath and spoke with quiet dignity. Meghan, I think it's clear that this interview isn't going in a productive direction. Perhaps we should move on to our next segment. Oh, now you want to move on, Meghan said, dripping with sarcasm. How convenient. When the conversation gets real, when someone challenges you to step up to your responsibilities, suddenly it's time to move on to something more comfortable. This isn't about comfort, Michael replied, voice gaining strength. This is about respect. Respect for our viewers, respect for this platform, and basic human respect. You've been given every opportunity to share your message, but instead, you've chosen to attack me personally and insult the people who watch this program. Meghan's response would become the moment that sealed her fate on the show. Respect, she said with a bitter laugh. Michael, respect is earned, not given. And frankly, I haven't seen anything this morning that suggests you've earned it. Gasps from the studio audience were audible. Several crew members shook their heads in disbelief. The producer in the control room was already preparing to end the disaster. But Michael wasn't finished defending himself or the show. The final moments of what would become television infamy were about to unfold. Michael Strahan, a man who had built his career on kindness, professionalism, and treating every guest with dignity, was reaching his breaking point. But first, he gave his guest one final chance to redeem herself. Meghan, he said, voice carrying the weight of years of broadcast experience, I'm going to give you one more opportunity to explain to our viewers what you hope to accomplish by coming on our show today. Meghan's expression twisted into contempt. What I hope to accomplish, Michael, was to have an intelligent conversation with someone capable of rising above the mediocrity that passes for journalism on morning television. Clearly, I overestimated your abilities. That was it, the final insult that broke through Michael's legendary composure. His smile vanished completely, replaced by a look of quiet determination. Anyone who knew him would recognize it as dangerous territory. You know what, Meghan? He said, calm, but carrying unmistakable authority. I've been in this business a long time. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, Nobel laureates, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things. In all that time, I've never encountered a guest more interested in tearing others down than building anything up. Meghan's eyes widened slightly, perhaps realizing for the first time that she had pushed too far. Excuse me, you heard me, Michael continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. You came on this show, supposedly, to talk about charitable work, about helping people, about making a positive difference in the world. Instead, you've spent the entire interview attacking me, attacking our viewers, and demonstrating exactly the entitled, condescending attitude that turns people away from the causes you claim to care about. The studio was electric with tension. Crew members who had looked uncomfortable were now watching intently as one of television's most respected hosts finally fought back against the most disrespectful guest in the show's history. Meghan's face flushed red. How dare you speak to me like that? Do you have any idea who I am? I know exactly who you are, Michael replied without hesitation. You're someone who thinks your title gives you the right to treat people poorly. You're someone who believes being rude and condescending makes you appear intelligent or important. And you're someone who has completely forgotten that respect is a two-way street. I don't have to listen to this, Meghan said, starting to remove her microphone. Actually, you do, Michael said firmly. You accepted our invitation to appear on this program. You agreed to be here, and the least you can do is show basic courtesy to the people who welcomed you into their homes this morning. Meghan stood up abruptly, her chair rolling backward. This is ridiculous. I came here to have a serious conversation about important issues, and instead I'm being lectured by someone who wouldn't understand real journalism if it hit him in the face. The personal attack only strengthened Michael's resolve. Real journalism, Meghan, involves listening to people, treating them with respect, and trying to understand different perspectives. It doesn't involve talking down to your host, insulting your audience, and acting like everyone around you is beneath your consideration. You don't know what you're talking about, Meghan shot back, voice rising to a level that made the audio engineers frantically adjust their equipment. I know exactly what I'm talking about, Michael replied, standing up to face her directly. I know what it's like to work with guests who are passionate about their causes but still treat everyone around them with dignity. I know what it's like to have difficult conversations about important topics without resorting to personal attack. And I know what our viewers deserve, which is certainly better than what you've given them today. Meghan's composure was gone. Your viewers don't deserve anything. They're sitting at home living small, insignificant lives, pretending that watching morning television makes them informed citizens. They need to be challenged. They need to be made uncomfortable. They need to face reality. Stop, Michael said, cutting through her rant like a knife. Just stop. You don't get to come on our show and attack the teachers shaping young minds, the healthcare workers saving lives, the parents raising good kids, and the countless others who make this country work every single day. The passion in his voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just defending his show anymore. It was defending the millions of Americans insulted by his guest's elitist attitude. Meghan seemed stunned. I never said yes. You did, Michael interrupted. You've spent the last 20 minutes telling me and everyone watching that we're not smart enough, not sophisticated enough, not worthy enough to engage with your important ideas. Newsflash, treating people poorly doesn't make you superior. It just makes you someone people don't want to be around. The control room was sending frantic signals, but the producer had decided to let the moment play out. Meghan was rattled, her carefully constructed public persona cracking under pressure. You have no right to speak to me this way. I am a member of the royal family, and I'm doing my job. Michael replied calmly, your title doesn't give you the right to be cruel to people. It doesn't excuse your behavior, and it certainly doesn't impress me or our viewers. This is unacceptable, Meghan said, looking around the studio as if expecting rescue. I demand to speak to your producer. I demand an apology. Michael's response was swift and final. The only person who owes anyone an apology here is you. You owe an apology to our viewers. You owe an apology to our crew. And frankly, you owe an apology to everyone who works hard to make positive changes in the world without feeling the need to tear others down in the process. Meghan's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, and something approaching panic. She had clearly never been confronted so directly by someone unwilling to be intimidated by her status or title. I'm leaving, she announced, pulling off her microphone and dropping it on the chair. That's probably for the best, Michael said calmly. Security will escort you out. As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the set. They weren't aggressive or dramatic, just professional men doing their job. But their presence made it clear that Meghan's time on Good Morning America was officially over. This isn't over, she said, pointing at Michael as she was led away. Yes, it is, he replied quietly, watching her being escorted off the set and presumably out of the building. Michael turned back to face the cameras, straightened his tie, and took a deep breath. When he spoke again, his voice carried the warmth and professionalism that had made him beloved by millions of viewers. Well, folks, that certainly wasn't what we had planned for this morning, he said with a slight smile that didn't quite hide the strain of the last half hour. We'll be right back after this commercial break with a cooking segment that I promise will be much more pleasant for everyone involved. As the cameras cut away and the studio lights dimmed for the commercial break, the crew erupted in spontaneous applause. Michael had defended not just himself and his show, but every hardworking American insulted by his guests' arrogant behavior. The aftermath would dominate social media for weeks. With overwhelming support for Michael's handling of the situation and universal condemnation of his guest, it became a masterclass in maintaining dignity under pressure while standing up for what's right. So, there you have it, the complete breakdown of one of the most shocking moments in morning television history. What do you think? Did Michael handle this correctly, or should he have ended the interview sooner? Let me know in the comments below.